So earlier today, I reached out to Billy Embody. I think he will get a kick out of this as well. And I said to him, so how much of this SMU and the possibility of whatever it might be, remember for a while it was the Pac-12, and then all of a sudden it flares up, it could be the ACC. And Billy basically said I think every breath of every day. And he joins us with Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak. Craig Smoak just went to Baylor football practice on 365 Sports. Has it really been like that? And it's like, it's good that it's there, but how much are you spending time on this?
Yeah, this has dominated the SMU message boards for a year now. Whether it be the Pac-12, any glimmer of hope from the Big 12, or even the ACC to a lesser degree, because the ACC has moved in relative silence. But when I tell you, you can have a recruiting commitment, you can have spring practice, spring game, whatever. People are wondering, well, did you hear anything new on realignment? What's the latest out there? Is there any chance? What's the buzz? It's been nonstop. I got to commend some of our members at ontheponyexpress.com. They keep that realignment thread buzzing every day.
Billy, so what we've heard is they're willing to not take a media share for a few years to get in. One is that really the case, or what kind of share would they be getting? And what do they feel their realistic chances are to get in? Because they might be the last of the group of five that has a real shot at this for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so I was skeptical when I saw the reports about no share coming SMU's way. I just thought, really, are they going to go completely zero and just kind of try to give it all up? But I've gotten it confirmed through a couple sources that is indeed the case for roughly 5 years at this point. And who knows? They're going back and forth. Their presidents are in discussion with the ACC. They're not in yet. Maybe there's another round of negotiating, so to speak, and we'll see how that ends up looking on the back end of things if it does happen. But right now, SMU is willing to give up 5 years of revenue from the conference, from the television deal, to get in a piece of that, of course. And what that would mean is that those conference schools would get that portion divided up, and they would be given that instead of it going to SMU, which would create roughly about $3 to $4 million a year in new money for these schools, depending on how well the ACC network and some of these other financial implications go when it comes to their TV deal as things progress over the years. So as ESPN looks back through the books and see how things went, that share and that money would be divided up. So that means SMU would be foregoing that money. Obviously, a full share member is around, I think, $30-something million, a little bit more than that in the ACC. And the big thing with them right now is trying to hold off Florida State and Clemson, trying to whet their appetite to stay longer, or at least kick the can down the road a little bit. And if you add SMU, you add Cal and Stanford. It hasn't been something that has been floated as SMU or Cal or Stanford. It seems like if SMU gets added, it's going to be with Cal and Stanford. There's a potential that only Cal and Stanford get added. But the most buzz I've heard has at least been around those three schools as a whole being talked about being added, because SMU would bridge the central time zone to the West Coast. And Cal and Stanford would take around 50%, which would give the schools roughly $6 to $8 million, again, kind of depending on how the numbers work out, in new money per year. So that's a large portion of the pitch from SMU and these schools. Now, on the flip side for SMU, could this happen? It very well could. This is something that SMU has been working on for well over a year. Everybody talks about the Big 12 because of a lot of the regional rivalries and the past and things like that. The Pac-12 was very public in terms of how everything was going down, but SMU continued to work avenues with the ACC. And even kind of dating back to May, I heard from a couple of people that felt like, hey, this isn't a situation where SMU's been told no, they've been told go away. They haven't certainly been told, hey, this is looking good, you're going to be in, like the Pac-12 has kind of given some indications. But they said, let's keep talking. Let's keep our options open, because there's a lot of kind of similarities in terms of mindset that SMU has that some of the ACC schools have. And so SMU kept doing that. Their leadership kept on them, their consultants, their board of trustees chair, David Miller, has been very involved. And it's something that they've just continued to go through. And so I think as the wake-up call happened with the Pac-12, where, look, these schools are not going to be honest with you most of the time. They're going to look out for themselves. I think the ACC is motivated because they don't want to look up in however long and see that Florida State, Clemson have left. Now they're down to 10 plus Notre Dame, so kind of 11 or however you want to count Notre Dame. And then UNC and NC State say, well, okay, we've got to do something now to get out ahead of this because we're going to be left behind too. So adding Cal, Stanford, and SMU would solidify the ACC from a numbers perspective, that you could weather that storm and keep yourself in the discussion as one of the top conferences.
Billy, SMU has money. We know that, and sometimes people take that for granted, but we know that they have an incredible alumni and donor base. They have been waiting for this opportunity. Now, they were kind of toyed with, I guess, because of the Pac-12, and that did not work out. Are they willing, or I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you because you're the one that covers it. Are they willing to have others who would write checks to offset anything else they would need to make sure this happened?
Yeah, so I was talking with a couple people, and look, what they're giving up basically would be the $7 million. And quite frankly, and you mentioned it, SMU has that type of money where that's not viewed as a roadblock. Mm-hmm. The $7 million that they currently get from the AAC, if it disappeared tomorrow and the league folded, there would be people that would step up and say, okay, we got this, we'll fill in this, we'll fill in that. It might take a second, but this is something SMU has been planning for. Taking a reduced share, taking a hefty discount, and now I think they know that with the ACC, they would have to give it up to get in. And there's a group that I think and have been told are highly motivated. There are people at the top like David Miller and others that have been, this has been their life for the last year, trying to get SMU into the Power 5 ranks, or now Power 4 ranks, I guess. And they're ready to foot the bill. They're ready to write it off and say, yes, we asked for this. We want our program to be in this club, which is, ever evolving, but we want our program to be in this club, give ourselves the best chance to move forward at a high level of collegiate athletics. And to do that, we got to all foot the bill. So let's divide it up. Let's make this happen, and we can be in the ACC. That's been their message, and I've been told that the $7 million, and let's just call it change for, assuming that they'll kick in some more money year to year to show that they're even more committed to the ACC and doing it at Power 5 level, which they have been, which, $200+ million in facilities the last couple of years going up. They are all in, and they will foot that delta of media money with no questions asked.
So, Billy, I mean, they've been preparing for this. Do you think that they could make a pretty seamless transition into competing in the league?
I think so. And what I mean by that, though, is one, you've got to see SMU this year kick the door down and be in the conference championship game for the AAC. You've got to see them win 10 games. You would really like to see them win the league. We know what SMU's done with NIL and their two collectives, which are, among the top ones just nationally. They've dumped about $4 million a year into it, which is really impressive. But you've got to kick the door down and become a winner. 1 10-win season and however many years it's been. This year, if they can steal one or two of the OU TCU out of conference games that they have, plus appear in the conference championship or win it, that is okay, they've shown they can get to that next level. They vanquished some of the past in terms of not being able to win some of the big games. Now you feel a little bit better in terms of where the program is really headed long-term for Power 5 conference, which once you get in, you can recruit better. You don't have to maybe NIL as much to beat out a Power 5 school to get a kid to come, or however it all works out. These are all now factors that work in your favor. Then you can build a little bit better depth. You can build a little bit better talent. You can pay your coaches more. You can do whatever at a higher level because you're in a Power 4, Power 5, whatever it is now. And that makes the transition a little bit better. So SMU has a team to win a conference championship this year. They absolutely need to do that or be in that game come December. And that would show a really good sign that things can be headed in the right direction long term. And then as you get into the ACC, you can continue to stockpile a little bit more talent and be ready to compete. I don't think this is a league that SMU would walk into and be at the bottom of the conference. I think there are some schools that are doing a pretty good job in the ACC of kind of owning that cellar right now. And if SMU can have another strong transfer class going into the 2024 season, and let's just say it all works out and they somehow get into the ACC, they're probably not a favorite by any means, but they're middle of the road, right where they kind of should be entering the league.
Would this be for 2024? For not obviously not this year. Would it be for 2024 when all the other realignment changes take effect?
So they are pushing for 2024, and that's another factor in this one too, where SMU's donors are willing to pay that exit fee for the AAC to get in 2024, which would probably be negotiated to about $10 million or so, or 15, kind of in that range. And they're ready to write that check. They were ready to write it for the Pac-12, and they want to get into the club as soon as possible. They know that even waiting a year could scuttle that if things can happen between now and 2025.
All right, Billy, we appreciate it. There's a note. I'm going to put the tweet up. Can we do that at the same time, Garrett, when we have Billy on? I'll let you know. I saw Larry Williams covers Clemson for Tigers Illustrated. He put out a report that Notre Dame is pushing hard for the Cal-Stanford edition because they are a voting member of the ACC. Do you feel like that one's a lock, or do you feel like that one's, like, let's say 1, and then SMU would be possibly 2?
I think it'd be really wise for the ACC to add Cal and Stanford just because they're already in the club. You know what you're getting for the most part with those two programs. But I'll say this. The stability is with the numbers. And in terms of trying to dig around on, well, is it Cal and Stanford or SMU, or is it Cal, Stanford, and SMU? I tend to dig around away from SMU on that. And from what I've gathered, it seems like there's more momentum to add all 3 versus just add 2. So I think when sometimes people kind of talk about it, you're going to talk about the 2 Power 5 teams, or current Power 5, or whatever they are, I guess, at this point, teams that are in the mix. But if you're going to add Cal, outside of them being right down the road from Stanford, that is a athletic department that's a complete mess. Mm-hmm. They have no money. They have debt. They haven't been committed to winning at a high level. I mean, I don't think Sonny Dykes would crush them publicly, but I'm sure you could ask him about it, and he'd give you a read between the lines answer on it. It's just not a good place to be right now. And that is why I feel, and I've gotten the sense from a couple sources, that if they add 2, they're going to add 3. And SMU is the team that's committed and gives them Texas out of those 3. So, I mean, if you kind of did a power rankings, it would almost be Stanford, SMU edging out Cal.
Is there anybody that's in the ACC right now that SMU needs to suck up to pretty quickly?
Well, I think it's interesting because Florida State and Clemson are trying to get out. We know that. But in the interim, before they figure that out, this deal would give them a nice little chunk of change. I know it's not much, but it would help. It would be $6 to $7 million. I think those 2 schools are key because they are power figures. Everybody's trying to listen to them. North Carolina, I've heard, interestingly enough, is one that SMU needs to kind of get in good graces with a little bit more. But, Mac Brown interviewed for the SMU job all those years ago. I'm surprised he hasn't said it'd be a good ad for the league. So, those are kind of the initial ones that I feel like they've got to get in good with, is the true power brokers of this league.
Billy, good stuff, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time from on3.com. Billy Embody covers SMU and also LSU, and we appreciate that. We have some super chats.